So I scored in the top 0.2% of Australia at the end of high school, and I know that a lot of people spend hours and hours studying and sometimes they never actually achieve the results that they want. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys 5 genuine insights from my time in high school and also from my observations of other people who've scored really well. Hey, if you don't know me, I'm Emil and I'm a first year medical student studying in Australia. And before I talk about anything that I've noticed about high scoring students, I'd like to just talk quickly about privilege. Unfortunately, I do think privilege plays a fairly large role in how well you can actually do at the end of high school, and I myself was in a very privileged position where I went to a school that had a lot of resources and where the teachers actually cared about how you did, and I also had a safe place to work at when I was at home, and I was able to buy the textbooks that I needed or afford the technology that I could to actually study. My aim in this video is to share some of the things that I think people who score really highly do so that you can possibly copy them and do as well as you possibly can. With that said, I think the first thing that I've noticed about all the students who score really highly is that they have a high degree of consistency. It might be hard for some people to hear, but the people who score really highly aren't studying for the exams the week before, they aren't studying a month before even, they're preparing way in advance. And what this really means is that these people aren't actually taking their weekends off. They're not just going on break on holidays. They're doing their homework, they're doing more than their homework, and they're working on the holidays as well to make sure that they can do as best as they can. And something I've noticed about this consistency is it doesn't just go back from the year of year 12, but it also goes back from years and years of work. For a lot of these people, they've actually been working hard since the ages of about 10 or 11 because a lot of their parents send them to do scholarship exams or scholarship exam testing, so they work really hard to prepare for the scholarship exams, and then they either get in and they continue to work hard. So these study habits and work ethics are built up over huge periods of time. And that's why I feel like for a lot of people who score really highly, they don't even realize how hard they're working, because working hard is just second nature for them because they've actually just been doing it since a very young age. And it's not to say that they don't take breaks, but it's also that they have the self-discipline to know that when they're taking breaks, they need to stop and start working again. This is probably the biggest thing that I've noticed about almost everyone who's actually done well. And don't get discouraged and think that you should give up because you haven't been working since 10 years old. But the big takeaway is that consistency is really important and that you should always start with consistency long in advance before your tests or your exams. Of course, this is far easier said than done, but that's why it's important to just start trying to aim for consistency with everything you do when you actually realize that you need it. This one might be surprising for some people, but I think so many of the people who score really highly, they're working ahead in both the textbook and their courses, and they're just getting ahead in all aspects of their schooling in general. The reason I think this helps people a lot is that if you've actually read ahead in the textbook or you've read ahead in the course, this means that when you go to class, you actually know what the teacher's talking about, and also you have more power to take control over what you actually want to do in your classroom. If you've read ahead, it gives you a lot of options in class in that you can either just zone out and do practice questions and get ahead that way because you know you've already covered what the teacher's gone over, or you can actually continue to listen to the class and you can further consolidate your knowledge because your brain is already primed with the information that the teacher is going to be talking about. I think an underrated aspect of learning ahead is also that it gives you a lot of confidence, and something that a lot of people understand is that teaching is one of the best ways to memorize information and to learn. And if you've learned ahead, that means that students around you will be asking you for help, and that means that you're actually teaching other kids how to do the work. And through doing that, you actually learn as well. Working ahead can be hugely beneficial at the end of the year as well because you'll finish the course far before everyone else, and you can spend as much time as you want reconsolidating information, reviewing the stuff that you've learned, and doing practice exams and getting ready for that final exam that matters the most. So the third thing that I've noticed a lot of high scoring students do is that they stick to their guns and they study the way they want to. And I hear and see so much information on YouTube about the best ways to study, taking flashcards, Anki, mind mapping, and all of that. But at the end of the day, if you don't actually enjoy studying in these ways, you won't end up doing as much study as you want to, and it can lead to procrastination and just being demotivated in general. The main point in this is that if you want to take notes, you should take notes. And if you find that that helps the way you study, then you should do that and stick to your guns. However, in saying this, I do think that in general, people who score highly actually do have certain study habits they do. And even though they might be taking notes, at the same time, they also do huge amounts of practice exams and doing active recall and effective study techniques that way. I think the main takeaway message from this is study however you want in class, take notes, do whatever, read and summarize, but make sure that you do practice exams and a ton of them. This leads me on to the other thing which I've noticed, which is that high scoring students all do very effective revision. Since they work really hard and they work ahead, a lot of high scoring students actually end up finishing the course weeks, if not months before the rest of their counterparts. And as a result, they have a lot of time for revision. The thing that I think separates a lot of these people from people who don't score as highly is that they do this revision really effectively. I think it's very easy once you finish a course to start relaxing and not realizing what you're actually doing with your time, but a lot of high scoring students really use this time as effectively as they possibly can. They'll end up talking to their teachers about what they should do to revise. They'll make sure that they revise the topics that they're weak at really carefully, and they'll make sure that they do this in a way that's actually effective for memorization and the exam. A huge trend that I see is that they always focus on understanding concepts rather than memorization, because once you understand a concept, the memorization tends to come much easier through application in questions. And the way a lot of high scoring students actually end up revising is they revise the topic that they want, and then they apply this knowledge in practice exams so that they actually remember it, and then they revise another topic, and then they do practice exams again, and practice exams will continue to have all of the questions from either of the topics so that they slowly build up their knowledge again from the baseline that they had. The other thing about this is that since these students have been working so hard throughout the year, the baseline of their knowledge is actually really high to start with, and as a result, there isn't necessarily as much revision as they would be for someone who hadn't been listening earlier in the year. The fifth and final thing that I think a lot of high scoring students do really aggressively is reviewing the practice and exams that they do. Everyone who scores really highly is actually very good at finding their areas of weakness, and I think the thing that separates them from possibly people who don't score as highly is that they actually target their revision to make sure that they account for the areas of weakness. I've seen a lot of people around me who realize that they're not doing as well as they want to in a certain topic, but they don't actually target their revision to that topic. And a lot of the time you hear excuses like, oh, I'm not actually that good at that topic, I'm naturally worse at that topic. And to a certain extent, that is true for sure. But amongst the highest scoring students, even if they feel like they're not as good at that topic as they would be naturally, they still target as much of their revision as they possibly can to that topic to bring it up to the level of their other strengths. Often they realize that in their areas of weakness, the weakness is actually caused by a lack of understanding. And then as a result, they talk to their teachers, they talk to their tutors, they talk to whoever they can to try and get that understanding built up, and from there to actually apply it and again, review their practice exams so that they bring it up to the level they want. So that brings me to the end of this video, and I hope you can take some of these things as inspiration and motivation to start studying now and copying some of these things so that you can do as best as you possibly can.